So last month, Discovery Media merged with Warner Media to create a new media conglomerate creatively called Warner Brothers Discovery. You'll notice how all the people in media who are so concerned about Elon Musk taking control of Twitter rarely bat an eye when these giant corporations merge or buy each other out or come together through other means of corporate copulation and form these giant monopoly behemoths. That is, they aren't concerned until they start losing their jobs, as was the case over at CNN when the newly formed Warner Brothers Discovery started cutting off the dead limbs, starting first with that rotting, useless piece of lumber called CNN Plus. The goal is to, bring everything, all of the various smaller streaming services owned by the company under Discovery Plus and HBO Max. Now, after the merger and the merciful euthanizing of CNN's streaming service, Warner Brothers Discovery needs some successes. It needs some hits. It needs to get some attention. It needs hits is what it needs. And it apparently believes that it has just that with a new series just announced, debuting on Discovery Plus in a few weeks, called Generation Drag. This is a reality show produced by Tyra Banks and revolving around 5 child crossdressers as they prepare for a big drag show in Denver, which invites, quote, teen queens, kings, and non-binary performers ages 8 to 18. Now, the children featured on the Discovery Plus show seem to run that age gamut from very young to simply young, and all of them, of course, too young to be involved in the liberal West version of Baka Bazi. Discovery released a trailer for this abomination on Friday. The comments, if you go to YouTube, are disabled. I wonder why. You can actually see why they're disabled when you watch the clip. Let's watch this.
Welcome to the Pink Palace, my lovely friends.
I first discovered drag at 13. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I wanted it. Put on the wig and the makeup, and I'm someone completely different. I'm so pretty!
My drag name is Vanessa Shimmer, and she is just a force you cannot reckon with.
How do I parent a child that wants to do drag?
I never expected drag to be a part of our lives.
Oh my God, these are so cute.
These are problems I never thought I had to prepare for.
What I love about drag is the glitz and the glam.
I want to pause here for a moment because I want to answer the question that the abusive mother asks, albeit rhetorically. She asks, how do I parent a child who wants to do drag? And her answer on how to parent the child is to not parent him at all, to instead allow him to be swept along by whatever forces are influencing him and simply stand by while he's used and abused in this way. Although that's probably a far too generous interpretation of this woman's role and motives, given that she's not only allowing her child to do drag, but also putting him on television. It's pretty clear that the forces influencing the child and driving him to crossdress are, at least partially, his parents. As the horror movies tell us, it's coming from inside the house. There are a couple more points to be made here, I think, some of which require us to unfortunately watch a little bit more of this, which we will do now. Watch.
My name is Noah, and I'm transgender.
Have you talked to Mom and Dad about the pictures?
What do you think of taking those photos down? The constant reminder that I had to pretend I was a boy.
Do you think a mom would ever want to watch me do drag?
How do I explain this to my child that she doesn't fully accept novella?
Making friends has been a hard thing for me to do. When I'm becoming Nemo, become more confident.
Let me make sure you are appropriately fluffed.
This transition has been difficult for them, but they try, and that's all you can ask for.
It's important for kids to understand that they're not alone.
So my mom started Draguton. Kids and their families are coming from all over the country where we get to be our true self.
Oh God, this is happening.
It's Vanessa Shimmer!
This is a place of love and support because we need that in this world.
This is me, and you better like it.
Bye!
Now, one interesting thing that you see there when you watch this is that it seems like every child featured in the show actually has what appears to be a father in the picture. And you notice one there, the father himself is wearing the drag wig. Now, that's probably not a coincidence. I'm sure they selected for that because they didn't want to, they didn't want to promote the stereotype that boys who get involved in this kind of thing oftentimes don't have fathers. So they selected families where there's a father there in the picture. But that only emphasizes the fact that there are many different kinds of fatherless homes. And when we talk about the fatherless home epidemic, oftentimes that boils down to the statistics of fathers who are physically not in the home. But if you're just looking at that, you're not getting the full picture because the actual epidemic is much, much larger than that. And there are plenty of homes where there's a father physically present, like he's a living, breathing organism taking up physical space within the home, but he's not present in any other way. He's not spiritually present. He's not emotionally present. He's not psychologically present. He's certainly not present as a source of discipline and direction, which is one of the primary things that children need fathers for. So these are all fatherless homes, even if their fathers, quote unquote, are physically there. Now, the child at the end there says, "This is me and you better like it." But tragically, he's wrong on both counts because he's been led wrong. He's been led astray. This is not him. When he's dressed up in girl clothes and prancing around on stage for the enjoyment of predator adults who should all be in prison, that's not him. What is presented on stage is a rejection of everything that comprises his authentic self, a rejection of his masculinity, his boyhood, his childhood, his innocence. All of that is sacrificed. And he's not choosing to sacrifice it because he doesn't know what he's giving up or what the consequences will be. The adults in his life are sacrificing it for him. Now, the fact that this show exists and is produced by one of the largest media companies in the world and one of the most famous and mainstream models in the world, Tyra Banks, is involved as well, and that they're putting this out there at a time when there's such intense and eminently justified backlash over this kind of thing, that all proves, yet again, of course, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that there is a conspiracy to groom and sexualize children. Warner Brothers is planting its flag here. They will promote the grooming and sexual abuse of children, no matter how much outrage it provokes. They're even willing to lose money to do it. Last week we had the clip from Good Morning America from a few years ago when they were talking about child drag performers, and they brought a child drag queen, quote unquote, on stage. And that was done at a time, as evidenced by the fact that hardly anyone noticed when they did it. That was done at a time when the media could do stuff like this and get away with it. Now you do this, there's going to be outrage. And they know that. So they're willing to deal with that. They're willing to lose money to do it. That's how important it is to them. And that's also an important point to be made here and to realize. But there's another point I want to make as well. Consider this. Child beauty pageants, events where young girls are caked in makeup and paraded around on stage, those are dying out all across the Western world. There's been even a push in some countries, including in this one, to ban the pageants outright. But even if they haven't been successfully outlawed yet, they're certainly, and thankfully, not nearly as popular as they once were. There is wide mainstream agreement that it is inappropriate to get your daughter involved in something like this. Worse than inappropriate, it's exploitative and abusive. This is one of the reasons why the horrible TLC show Toddlers and Tiaras was canceled back in 2013. And even people who won't necessarily go that far in describing the pageants, maybe won't call them abusive and exploitative, even most of those people will admit that it's controversial at any rate. You can go to pretty much any left-wing media outlet and find articles that have been written denouncing these kinds of pageants. Certainly if Discovery, which owns TLC, had announced last week a revival of Toddlers and Tiaras, there would be widespread outrage over the decision, and it would be outrage echoed by the left wing and in the mainstream media. After all, why do you need to dress little girls up like fashion models and cake makeup on their face and then send them out on stage to strut around? Is this how little girls should be spending their time? The answer, of course, is no, and most people seem to agree, these days, anyway, that the answer is no. And yet, if you take little boys and put them in dresses and cake them in a makeup, suddenly many of the people who said that this sort of thing sexualizes little girls are okay with it. More than okay, they celebrate it. In fact, Tyra Banks herself, on her short-lived talk show 10 years ago, addressed the issue of child beauty pageants and treated it as a controversial subject. She apparently was against it. Now she's producing a show about drag pageants for boys. How can this be explained? Have these people suddenly decided that what was sexualization for girls isn't for boys? No. The answer is not that they don't think that these drag shows sexualize kids. It's that in this case, that's exactly what they want to do. Sexualizing girls is wrong, they say. But sexualizing boys for the sake of promoting the LGBT lifestyle, well, that's an entirely different matter as far as they're concerned. And that, I think, is the real point behind all of this. Listen, hit that subscribe button right now. Do it right now. I thank you for your compliance. It is somewhat appreciated.